Welcome back to the 1% Show. If you're new here, tune in to hear me spin the yarns with authors, savants, and eccentric humans every week. I'm your Aussie host, Brandon Nankivell, and it's time to kick back and enjoy the show. Let's go. Do you find it difficult to find time to read? Well, I put together an online course that will teach you how to get twice as much value out of books by reading half as much. It will show you how to strategically select valuable books before you even invest time into reading them. This is something that speed reading courses don't teach you. It will show you whether you should be reading books, ebooks, or audiobooks. It will show you how to conquer your wandering mind, how to apply what you read so you can actually create real results, which is what reading is all about at the end of the day, and how to avoid wasting countless hours due to poor reading habits. It's a lifetime investment that will help you to extract more value from every single book you read from now on. To get started, head to EliteReaderAcademy.com. Again, that's EliteReaderAcademy.com. I'll see you there. So, awesome, Eliott. Now, based on your website, this is just ripped straight directly from the website just to give people a bit of a background on who you are, just for those who don't know, although most of my listeners, I'm sure they have heard your name. But, what goes on the website is, so Eliott is an internationally renowned strength and conditioning coach, a strongman, author, social media celebrity, mentor, holistic life coach, and inspiration to millions of people. Sharing his message, be the strongest version of yourself and inspire others. So, Eliott, you have over 2.5 million viewers through your YouTube channels, Strength Camp and the Elliott Hulse channel, and you've made yourself a name for unifying the development of the body and the mind. You are very known for saying the body is the mind. Now, you've also collaborated with Ty Lopez, Wim Hof, Owen from Real Social Dynamics, Brian Rose from the London Real, and many, many more. So it's pretty freaking awesome, Eliott. So I just want to give you like an official welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Awesome, dude. So just out of interest, what does a typical day look like for you right now?
Well, I can tell you what I did today. That's usually a good start.
Sure.
I was up at 5 a.m. I usually get up, and I dedicate the first hour of my day to my most important activity. So that might change from time to time, but what I get up and do first is always based on priority. And right now, writing is a priority for me. So I got up this morning and I spent an hour writing. And then today is Wednesday, so it happens to be the day that I keep all of my meetings and all my interviews and things of that nature. That's why we're speaking. Mm-hmm. So after I wrote, I dropped my kids off at gymnastic camp. I have 4 children. I dropped 3 of them there. The other one's with their mom going to a dentist appointment. And then I met my business partner at Strength Camp, Chris Barnard. He started out as one of my clients almost 10 years ago and worked his way up to being my partner at Strength Camp. So he and I meet once a week down by the bay and we walk. I like having meetings that are active. I'm not good in sit-down meetings. I think the best ideas percolate when we're active. So we walk down by the bay. We've been doing this for well over a year. So I had my meeting with Chris. I rushed back here to meet with you. I got a few other Skype meetings the rest of the day before I record a Yo Eliott video for YouTube and hit up my own workout before retiring to shower in bed with my wife.
Fantastic. Awesome. Thank you for the overview. Love it. So I'm very, very curious, Eliott, about this, the way you do meetings where, active. You mentioned the word active, and I've heard about your active meditation and things of that nature. And, there are a lot of great thinkers in our time who would actually go on walks, and they believe that's where the real thinking happened. But again, maybe that's something completely different. So on the 1% Show, Eliott, there's zero judgment. So it's all about inquiring, asking questions, and then just sitting back and listening. So the stage is all yours, and I'm just going to roughly guide the conversation, and we'll see where it goes.
Sounds good.
Good as. So, yeah, my first question here, Eliott, for you is, I'm wondering what the difference is between bioenergetics and active meditation, and why does that matter?
Well, we could probably start way before that in order to describe what each of them is, because neither of them are mainstream ideas, both of which are modalities that I've popularized and brought to the table most recently. I didn't make either of them up. Active meditation was introduced to me when I was about 24 years old. I was going through a bit of a tough time. My wife, at the time, we had just been married and we got pregnant. We were living in my father-in-law's basement. I had just lost my job. I was getting pretty sick. And I was spending some time reading philosophy books because it's what I've loved to do since I was in high school. And I was reading Osho's philosophy. And Osho, if you don't know much about him, he's a radical Indian mystic. If you spend some time on Wikipedia, you'll find out just how wild the guy was. But he was also brilliant. And in the 70s also, there was a big movement he happened to be a part of also called the Human Potential Movement. And people were exploring different ways to become better, 1% better, right? I say the strongest version.
There you go.
And one of the ways that a lot of people include that a lot of this was sparked off by Wilhelm Reich. I could talk about him in a moment when we get to bioenergetics, but Osho took the ancient practice of getting in touch with the sensations in your body and your breathing and turned them into active meditations. And what an active meditation is a way to get in touch with your truth, get in touch with your body, get in touch with yourself through movement and breathing. And so at that time, I lived in Long Island, New York, and I was reading about Osho's active meditations. Being an ex-football player, a personal trainer, I was like, man, this is meditations, good for my health, my mind, but it's also good for my body. And I'm not the kind of guy that diagnosis of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder when I was like 9 years old. So I'm not naturally inclined to sit down and meditate, although over the years I've learned how to. But Osho offered a different way to find that stillness, and that was through extreme activity. And so I signed up for a dynamic meditation workshop in New York City that I did for 21 days. I had to wake up at 3:30 in the morning to catch the Long Island Railroad and 2 trains to get to the city in order to this 5-stage active dynamic meditation for 21 days in a row. And briefly, what the meditation looks like is it's broken down into 5 stages. The first stage is designed to charge the body with energy. A lot of people either need to increase their energy because they're blocking so much. These people who are tired all the time or anxious, depressed, a lot of it has to do with not breathing deeply enough, not getting enough energy in their body. And breath is energy, breath is life. So the first stage is all about breathing, deep, chaotic, fast breathing. And it's fun and it's crazy. And it ends at about 10 minutes. For 10 minutes, you're breathing through your nose, using your whole body. I've demonstrated this on YouTube. The second stage is called catharsis, because once you charge someone's body up, it's almost like a metaphor for getting the charge up in your body through your breath would be like if someone took a power wire, like, an electricity cord and plugged it into you and woke you up, jolted you into aliveness. Whatever you've been holding back will rise to the surface and want to come out. For a lot of people, that's screaming, yelling, shouting, dancing, laughing, moving, shaking. So you allow your body to release whatever has been held back at that point. That's stage 2. Stage 3, we then begin to ground the energy again, because we were not going to walk around in that in that state. We want to experience it so we can discharge, but then we want to ground the energy again. And so there's a practice for that includes jumping and landing flat on the feet and using deep sounds to drive the vibration into the belly. When you make deep resonating sounds, you literally feel the inner tube of your body vibrate, right? The deeper I speak, I'm being conscious of it now, the more I'm speaking with a deep tone right now, the more I feel my belly, the more my belly's engaged. If you ask anybody who sings, they'll tell you the same thing. You want to get that vibration to move deep. You want to get that opening to move deep down into your belly even. I say breathe into your balls. When we're ungrounded, a lot of what we do happens from up top in our throat. People breathe from their throat. They speak from their throat. They're in their heads. Their face looks like it's going to explode. You see some people when they're speaking from that high place. What we want to do is we want to drive the energy back down. And so we use sounds to support that. The fourth stage is stillness, silence. And at this point, you're exhausted. So stillness comes a little bit easier. Physical stillness, for sure. And mental stillness begins to slow down because the body is not holding any anxious energy any longer. So, and it's a process. For the fifth and final stage is celebration. And that's where we simply dance and carry that new, refreshed, grounded feeling into our day. So that's Osho dynamic meditation. And so when that's applied and facilitated, it's usually done in groups. And so when you're asking about the difference between dynamic or active meditation and bioenergetics, a good analogy would be that active meditations in many ways is like CrossFit or like boot camps. It's a lot of people engaging together, going through a process that's being facilitated by a coach. There's also music. Bioenergetics, on the other hand, and I'm going to start with the analogy and then I can go deeper if you want me to in the explanation of what it is.
Sure.
More like personal training. It's a one-on-one experience. It's about holding space for someone so that they can go through this process in a more intimate way.
Okay, interesting. And so essentially your grounding camp, you pretty much run everyone through this 5-step process. Is that correct?
For 3 days, we do a total of 6 or 7 active meditations, and we dabbled with some bioenergetic modalities.
Right. And so just touching on, I think you mentioned Alexander Lowen. He wrote the book Bioenergetics, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that Lowen's work was influenced by, I forgot what figure you mentioned before, Osho, I think. What was his name? Or was it Wilhelm Reich? Yeah, so I'm wondering specifically in regards to the book, Bioenergetics, what have been your biggest takeaways from that book? And is it good for someone wanting to get into bioenergetics?
I'll preface it by this. Reading about bioenergetics and me talking about bioenergetics does nothing but prepare you to accept bioenergetics. It's challenging to get there by reading. It's not conceptual, it's experiential. That's why I've had such a hard time conveying it over the many years. And that's why I developed grounding camps so that people can do it and be it rather than conceptualize it. We live in a world and in a time where ideology is far more sought after and appreciated than wisdom and experience. So everybody wants to know more about everything, and knowledge begins to increase and overload, and we become almost gluttonous. We become almost obese with the amount of knowledge that we're stuffing in our heads. All of which remains there, and there's no understanding because there's very little application, there's very little wisdom, there's very little experience. That's okay, that's where we are, but this is one of these things where we've got to actually embody it. So reading about bioenergetics is great because when I start talking about it, you'll have a better grasp on what I'm talking about. It's really one of these things that, if you try to do it on your own, it's not a matter of trying to disempower anybody by saying you can't do it, but it's really, we are as human beings designed to be in communication with one another and hold space for one another and facilitate a process. That's why there's coaches to help you with it. But if you're really wanting to get into the understanding of it or the knowledge of it, I like to say there's a difference between understanding and knowledge. Knowledge stays in your head. Understanding goes underneath. It goes into your body. It is an embodiment. The best book to read would be Alexander Lowen's Language of the Body. He wrote bioenergetics for the public, for people to get in. This was in the 70s too. I mean, the guy wrote 14 books. He's brilliant. But bioenergetics was written because the analytical community and the medical community rejected his his real work, his real research, which was language of the body. And language of the body, the reason why I recommend that for all my students and anybody who works with me first is because he goes deep into character structure, character analysis that was developed by Wilhelm Reich. And the biggest takeaway, to answer your question finally, the biggest takeaway from not the book you suggested, but language of the body, is to begin to actually see and recognize and work with the patterns that show up in the muscular system that betray our psychological predisposition. So I'll say that in a different way. If you are an anxious person, it's going to show up in your posture. If you're a depressed person, it's going to show up in your posture, your eyes, the way you breathe. If you are an angry person, so on and so forth. Emotion shows up in the body, and over time, it becomes our character. So what makes that book and the takeaway from that book so fascinating is that you can begin to sort of self-diagnose what emotional baggage yourself or someone else is carrying by how someone looks.
Right. That's quite incredible. I'm quite, I'm blown away. I've just got a million more questions, but I'll keep it to the most important ones. So, okay, let's take me, for example, Eliott. I've been in the self-development game for, 3-4 years, around about now. And just overall, I'm feeling quite content about life. I'm in great health. I exercise every day, and I just overall I feel generally content. I socialize. I get moving through my exercise, and sometimes I might do a bit of meditation. Probably not as much as I should, but the point I'm trying to make is, do you see there being a benefit for those who feel like they don't necessarily have any deep issues? Like, I'm wondering, do you think there's any deep issues that I might have that I just simply don't realize that could be stored up deep somewhere inside my body or my mind?
Yes, absolutely. You're all kinds of fucked up. You just don't know.
Interesting.
By mere virtue of having a human body, we crystallize our psychology, our spirituality, all the intangibles. We're a spectrum. As a human being, we're not just this physical experience. We are an emotional experience, right? Emotions are movement. It's movement in the body, vibrations, however you want to describe it. We are a mental body. Your thoughts are available through the body. They're there. And you're a spiritual body that precedes the thoughts. So to bring that full circle as to why we all need some sort of access to our fullness, to our wholeness, and towards integration. Yes. All right. Let me slow down and come back to answering your question. So I played college football. I was a professional strongman. I'm the first of 4 children. I've been the captain of the football team. I pretty much am winning. And when I was 24, besides the fact that, I was going through a tough time and I decided to take up meditation, I was winning. I wasn't looking for therapy. I wasn't looking for anything to support me. I was just curious about what else I was, right? From a very early age, I knew there was far more to me than the color of my skin, than my body. I knew there was much more. So when I went to this active meditation workshop, the instructor was offering a class, a session on something she called pulsation, which is really a form of bioenergetic breathing. I didn't know anything about it, and I just went in there with curiosity. She had me perform a few breathing exercises. She then instructed me to do some other exercises, one of which included laying face down on a mattress and humping my hips into it. She asked me to grab the mattress and slam my hips into it, all while breathing deeply and heavily with my eyes wide open. Just exercises, weird exercises, but exercises nonetheless, with breathing. After about 4 or 5 minutes of that kind of exercise, that type of breathing and movement, I broke into the most uncontrollable, spontaneous laughter I had ever experienced since I was maybe about 6 years old. The type of laughter that, people laugh. People laugh because it's nice to fucking laugh. They laugh because it's the right thing to do when someone tells a joke. I'm talking about the type of laughter that, well, spontaneously arrived. Nothing funny was said. And I could not stop it. It took over me. It was like I was possessed by laughter. And as I'm laughing and apologizing to the teacher, she quickly calms me down and says, it's okay, keep laughing. Don't worry about it. Don't apologize to me. Continue to enjoy that movement through your body. And so I let go and I allowed myself to continue breathing. Laughing, when I finally caught my breath, I asked her, well, what happened? What was that all about? I didn't expect that. I didn't know that I had that in me. And she explained to me simply that we dislodged some repressed joy, laughter. I mean, I couldn't argue with her. I was laughing. It was very joyful. It felt good. And all we did was some exercises. At that point, I realized that there was so much more within me that I didn't know because I was holding back. I was suppressing. See, you say you feel good, but that's because everything that you're suppressing is unconscious. You don't know that you don't feel good. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that I was holding back my joy. I had no clue that I was holding joy back. But when it came out, I was able to see it for the first time. And not only that, an interesting side effect was that for the next year, and it still happens today because I'm still very active with my meditation, when I'm done having sex with my wife, I break into the same uncontrollable laughter. She couldn't understand what was going on. Yeah, the first time that happened, because it was like, shortly after that first session, we have sex, and I'm laughing. I'm tearing up again. She was a little concerned. She was like, what happened? What are you laughing at? I've never done that before. Yeah. Well, the truth is that I was able to access something of my sexual energy and emotion that wasn't available before.
Right on. Yeah. I guess you don't know what you don't know, right? Wow, that's quite bizarre. So I'm wondering, I know you spent some time with Wim Hof, and a lot of people have been intrigued by the Wim Hof method, especially since last year and also a bit of this year as well. And just through my own personal exploration, I tried Wim Hof method, and I did a few cycles of his breathing for about 10 minutes. And as far as I can relate with what your experience was, I did find that after about 5 to 10 minutes of Wim Hof breathing, I did break out, not to the extent that you did, but I did start feeling giggly, and a bit of a buzzing sensation in my body. So I haven't gone beyond that, but to me that was quite bizarre, and I haven't delved into it further. But maybe that's sort of just like the I don't know, the entry level gateway to what you're talking about, or maybe, like, do you reckon that might be sort of touching the surface, if you know what I mean?
Absolutely, 100%. It's scratching the surface.
Okay.
What Wim Hof breathing, if you want to call it that, does is it exposes you to the idea that there are altered states of consciousness available through my breathing, and I think that being woken up in a lot of people is great. Where bioenergetic breathing, the way I teach it and work with my clients, differs from the Wim Hof breathing. Number one, I don't invite anybody to try to do it on their own in order to get great results. I don't think it's one of these things that you can just do as an exercise and get to where you need to go. It's a nice putting your toe in the water. But what ultimately needs to happen is, the way I do it is I start to recognize how your body is blocking the breathing through tension that arises from the bottom of your feet all the way through the top of your head. I am a fitness coach. That's what I do first and foremost. I recognize muscular imbalances. This is how I got into this. I started recognizing muscular imbalances could be helped through stretching and strengthening, but I also recognized through character structure, Alexander Lowen, that muscular imbalances can also be, and usually are, caused by holding, I call them neurotic holding patterns, psychological holding. So for example, I wrote an email about it today. Take notice of your body when you're in nervous situations. You go up to talk to a girl for the first time. Don't worry so much about what you're thinking about going to say. Look at your body. Look at how you're breathing. Look at where your eyes go. The body starts doing all kinds of weird fucking things when you're in these situations where you're nervous or ungrounded. What I'm interested in is those. I'm interested in those weird little tweaks and imbalances and movements in your body so that I can help you open it up and so you can breathe through it. Are you following me?
Yep.
Good. So for example, you're laying down and you're doing Wim Hof breathing. And you're breathing, and I don't know too much about it. I visited him, but we didn't do any breathing at all together. And so you're breathing there. And so I would instruct you to start breathing into your belly. The breathing wave, the breathing pattern, the way the breath moves mechanically through the body is that there is a rising of the belly, 2/3, 1/3 of the chest, up through the scalenes, and we literally breathe into our head. I say we breathe into 3 sets of balls, the balls of our feet, our balls, and our eyeballs. Your whole body is a breathing mechanism. And if you look at the way a baby's breathing, you're going to recognize that that's true. The whole body's breathing. Just watching an infant in a crib.
Okay.
As we get older, blocks begin to arise in various parts of the body. So if you're laying down breathing into your belly and all of a sudden I recognize that your solar plexus or your lungs, your rib cage is not expanding and you're having a hard time expanding, no matter how much I tell you, keep breathing, you're not expanding. Well, as a exercise coach, I am going to help facilitate your breathing process by helping you stretch your ribs, stretch your lungs, get some thoracic extension so that you can deepen your breath and keep moving through the process. Sometimes when I work with people, we breathe for 2 hours because I can keep finding more space for them to breathe into.
Okay, so breath doesn't just go into your lungs. Is that what you're saying?
Air goes into your lungs. Yes, air goes into your lungs. It doesn't go anywhere else.
Yeah.
Breathing is a mechanism. Breathing is physical. Breathing is happening with your muscular system. The whole body breathes. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm not saying that oxygen goes into your balls when I say breathe into your balls.
Yeah.
I'm saying your muscular system should be relaxed enough in order to move the way it's been designed to facilitate the breathing mechanism.
Sure, yeah. Now that I think about it, and even just doing it where I'm sitting right now, if I take a real deep breath, you can actually see my whole body moving, including like my shoulders might raise a little bit and my back and everything. So I presume that's what you mean.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just watch a baby. Watch a baby breathing and when they're sleeping, you'll recognize. And watch a baby when a baby's upset. The whole body convulses. Every bit of it cries. When we become adults, because our bodies become so dead and dormant, most adults can't cry, first of all, when they're upset. They can't voice their upset. They don't know how to because it's been shut down.
Yeah.
But when they do, they start biting their lips. The chin quivers a little bit. The face does some strange convulsions and a tear drops. That's the holding. That's the holding back of the emotion. When a baby cries, their belly's crying, their feet is crying, their neck is crying, their whole body is a crying mechanism because the energy is moving through the entire body. It's free enough to. The baby's not saying to itself, oh, I don't want anybody to see me crying, so I'm going to bite my lip down. And, that causes all kinds of jaw tension that shows up later on in people's lives.
Sure. And so I also want to ask, what's the idea of opening your eyes really wide and screaming at the top of your lungs? Because I've seen that in your videos.
Well, first of all, the eyes are probably the first place that start to become blocked. Our eyes are so fucking blocked, and our eyes are the windows to the soul. So if you want to gain access to the windows of your windows of your soul, you want to open up your windows of your soul so that you can see out and be seen. Just recognize how people don't want to be seen by what they do with their eyes. They literally will close their eyes or shift their eyes. Meet people in the street, they're hiding from you. They're hiding their eyes. So Seeing people and being seen has everything to do with the eyes, and the eyes are nothing more. See, everything I'm saying sounds metaphorical, but the eyes are physical. Our body is physical. There are muscles associated with eyes. There are muscles in the back of the head that control the eyes. There are muscles around the eyes that support the eyes. There are muscles on your face that support the eyes. As a fitness coach and someone who's helping you breathe through your whole body, I want to help you stretch those muscles. I want you to, besides stretching, I want you to get in touch with those muscles, know what's going on there. Most people don't know what's going on in their bodies. They're acting completely unconscious. Their eyes are doing all kinds of shit and they don't even know it. So by putting tension on it, by stretching it open, now you're aware of your eyes. You have no choice but to know that you've got eyes, because now you're in one exercise, we actually ask you to bug your eyes out, almost try to push your eyes out. How many times have people done that? People go to the gym. I'm a fitness coach. People go to the gym. They all do all kinds of armor building exercises for their chest and their back. Very rarely does anyone consider the critical muscles that are associated with who you are, that are in your neck, your jaw, your face, and across your skull. All of which not only needs to be taken into consideration because I say so, but if you look at anatomy and physiology and how the body works, and recognize that right below the pineal gland and the pituitary gland, right above the palate within the mouth, you find essentially the control system for the rest of your entire body. And if there's muscular imbalances in your throat, in your jaw, above your palate, you're screwing up a bunch of different things by placing pressure on those glands and also that part of the brain. And everything that happens from that control center, right between your ears and behind your eyes, everything that's happening there trickles down your entire body. So if there's a muscular imbalance in your head and face, then you could be having toe problems as a result, because there is a kinetic chain.
Wow. So ultimately you help people become more balanced, and when you're balanced in terms of, your muscular system and everything of that nature, when you feel balanced, if that's the word we want to use here, does it help you feel alive? Like, what is it about that balance that really gives the most benefit? Is it the feeling of aliveness, or what's the ultimate practical benefit?
I will give you the most practical and simple one, because I know I can go out into left field. I'll stay right home. As your posture improves, you use less energy to hold yourself up and walk, and thus will have more energy for life. You will have more energy because you're not fighting against the resistance of your own physical collapse due to muscular imbalance.
Sure. Okay, cool, man. Makes complete sense. And then I also saw there's another video clip of you're out in the rain, and I forgot what you said exactly, but basically you're out there in the rain, it's pouring down. Normally people shy away from it, but you're just out there like fucking beating your chest, going, bring it on, bitch. Like, you're really embracing the rain. So I'm wondering, how does that tie into what we're talking about here?
Accepting and loving sensation in your body. Most of us become cut off from our bodies completely. All kinds of moral judgments and evaluations are placed on our body, especially as it relates to sex. And when we cut ourselves off from our body, we become disassociated from our body. We become disassociated from life. And what we're really trying to disassociate from with regard to our body is emotions that have been deemed improper, right? And when you cut back one emotion, one movement pattern, you cut off its corollary. So, for example, we were talking about crying and upset babies before. Well, the way you shut down crying and anger, although sobbing and anger often show up at the chest and jaw level, the mouth. The mouth is our first defense mechanism in many ways, as a part of our primordial ancestry. The mouth, the teeth, look at most animal dogs, the teeth, we're still very much linked in many ways to all the other animals that live here. And the mouth is an aggressor. right? And we use our mouth aggressively through shouting, speaking. A lot of us have nervous tics in our mouth because we don't know what to do with this energy. So you people chewing gum, chewing their fingers, chewing their lip, all kinds of nervous energy in their mouth. As you are suppressing the anger or the sadness that would arise in your mouth, as you're experiencing all the anxious tics associated with suppressing it, we are also shutting down the channel by which we kiss and taste and make love with. The mouth is also a very sensual part of the body, the lips. First thing you do when you want to be with someone is you go to the lips. So one who has trapped anger in their face and mouth is not going to be available for the most sensual experience of kissing and lovemaking, because the same channel, it's the same lips, the same mouth, you see? So when I talk about going out, that was just having fun, going out into the rain and feeling the rain touch me. But so many of us are afraid of feeling in the body that when a little bit of cool rain touches their body, they freak out. And if you just notice, because I've done it too. You know, I'm brought up in society. I have a body. I've been conditioned. Yeah. And sometimes when it rains, if I'm not conscious of the stupidity, I almost retreat from my skin. Ooh, raindrop just touched. Watch someone who unexpectedly a raindrop touches them. Yeah. They jump. It's a fearful jolt. And then the shoulders go up. Just watch somebody in the rain. The shoulders go up and they start raining. Yeah. They start running like a tiger is chasing them. That is all happening unconsciously. In that video, when I was in the rain and I was feeling the drops on my skin, I'm essentially making a point that I'm not afraid to feel nature on my body. I'm not afraid to feel rain. I'm not afraid to feel anger. When anger comes up, I let it come up and be discharged. I'm not afraid to feel my feelings.
Yeah, incredible, Eliott. So I think we've got really enjoying the conversation so far, by the way. I think we've got about 20 minutes left. So I do have 4 to 5 questions left. And they are really quite interesting ones and kind of niche. So the first one here, Eliott, is NoFap is currently trending quite a lot lately, where you semen retention, if we want to call it that, where you abstain from porn and masturbation. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this.
I have no opinion. I have absolutely no opinion because, number one, I don't jerk off because I'm married. So I have lots of sex.
Sure.
Right. So who am I to make judgments and evaluations on people who beat off? If I wasn't having sex multiple times a week with my wife, I'd probably be beating off too. And then I'd have to tackle that issue. So I really am not qualified.
Yeah, no worries, man. Awesome. So the next question is, you've briefly mentioned, psychedelic compounds, and I believe it was in your interview with Brian Rose. And so I'm just wondering what your current view is on using psychedelic compounds as a tool for spiritual growth and self-growth.
Again, I'm not qualified. I did it once and I wasn't impressed, I gotta say. And that's why I put all my energy into sharing active meditation and bioenergetics, because I've gotten far more in the way of personal development, self-exploration, and psychedelic experiences through movement and breathing than through plant medicine. And I'm not saying that the plant medicine isn't helpful. I'm just saying it's not my thing, and I'm not sure it's necessary.
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you for that viewpoint. Really interesting. And so I know, I think on your website somewhere it says, Alan Watts is a thinker that has somewhat influenced you. And, he does have ties to the psychedelic realm. So given that you've mentioned Alan Watts there on the website, what role does he play in terms of how you go about life?
Alan Watts was a central figure in my life before the internet was even like a thing. My brother and I were he may have been in high school, I was in college, and Napster first came out. I don't think I had an email address at the time. And on Napster, people were file sharing. And me and my brother's always been deep into spirituality, even as a kid. We were talking about it, it's fascinating. And we would go on and look up spiritual ideas. We started looking up for like Taoism and Buddhism. We've been into spirituality and religion forever. And so back in like 1999, he and I were listening to this witty British dude talk about Hinduism and Taoism and Buddhism, and we just ate it up. So at that time in my life, he awoke me to the philosophies of the East.
Mm-hmm. Right. Interesting. So, sorry, I'm just a bit conscious of the time here. I'm trying to stay with you. Just moving on to the next question here, Eliott. Sorry, my attention strayed that last 30 seconds. I'm wondering, I know on your page you've got, you mentioned you're a believer in, I think it's how you pronounce it, is Bahai Faith. And so this is on the grounding camp page. And I'm just curious, number one, what is the Bahai Faith? I'm really curious. I don't know too much about it, but I'm curious nonetheless. And number two, can people who don't currently follow this faith, can they still benefit from your grounding camp?
I'll answer the second question first.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. It has nothing to do with it, really. I just like to give credit where credit's due. And I was tremendously inspired by the founders of the Bahai Faith back around the same time that I found Alan Watts in my early adulthood.
Right.
And I found Alan Watts and the Bahai Faith both because I've always been interested in religion and philosophy. So when I actually found the Bahai Faith, it was because I was looking for a spiritual community. I was looking for people to speak about spirituality with. And I had my eyes open, and one day I saw a commercial. And the commercial, this was back like, 2001, right after 9/11. So, people were feeling kind of nervous about brown skinned people. I mean, racism in America has always been our biggest struggle.
Yeah.
It wasn't even a new thing. It's always a white against brown and black. And so, but on this commercial, there were children of multiple races playing with one another and enjoying themselves. And then a quote came up that said something to the effect of, "We are all leaves of the same tree, flowers of the same rose garden." And I thought that was beautiful and poetic. So I decided to visit the website, Bahai.org. And I read the website, and I met the community, and my wife and I really loved it. And so we decided to be a part of it. What we love most about it, I can go into the tenets of the Bahai Faith, or I can go into my experience of it. But what I love more than anything about it, well, I guess I would say that they are the tenets. It's an Abrahamic religion, based on the idea of progressive revelation. And this basically means that God is constantly showing us the way through teachers that arrive in our midst at different times and different places throughout the planet to give us some inspiration for what we need to be our strongest self. So, of course, we've got Abraham, we've got Moses, we've got Buddha, we've got Jesus, we got Muhammad, we've got, the list goes on of all these incredible teachers that came and brought us ideas that enlightened us at various stages during our evolution at various different places, all of which turned into religions that ultimately started to create division amongst us, which is a byproduct of our old form of consciousness.
So go on.
Baha'is believe that we live in a new day. And in this day, there ought to be some new ways of being that are associated with how human beings can get along and evolve individually and collectively. And so Baha'is believe that the teachings of Baha'u'llah, who Baha'is believe to be the most recent in all of the manifestations of God. He doesn't supersede any of the manifestations or teachers of God. He just shows up, and as all teachers do, and says, hey, shit has changed. We got to act a little differently here's what's expected. When Jesus showed up, he gave us the golden rule. He's like, hey, look, treat your neighbor like you want to treat yourself. That's basically that's the foundation of what he's teaching you. It's a pretty good idea. Everything else, it's up to you to decide. Baha'u'llah's main message can be wrapped up in one word, but I'll give you a little bit more, of course, because I'm going. Unity. And that is not just unity amongst people, it's unity within the individual, and it's unity within the individual and our creator, however you want to describe it. God isn't necessarily the word you have to use. And some of those practicalities look like the elimination of racial prejudice, the elimination of religious strife. Here's one that I love probably more than any: the independent investigation of truth. In this day, we don't need a clergy to tell us what to think. In this day, it's up to us to investigate, do all your investigation, and make your own choice. Baha'is do not proselytize. It's not our job to make anybody believe anything, right? Another one that I really like, and a lot of people in this, we live in the scientific age, and religion sounds like bullshit to a lot of people, but this happens to be a religion that says science and religion should support one another. If science says something that the religious scripture and the religious people are holding on to as crap, then we ought to recognize it because it violates scientific law. You see, so there's no having to believe, someone walked on water or rode a cloud because, it's kind of insignificant and untrue. And part of the reason why people spoke in those metaphors, like Jesus walking on water, was because we used the language of mythology and metaphor to give deeper truths. Jesus walking on water has nothing to do with bare feet on H2O. It has everything to do with a man who treads the unconscious. The water is a symbol for the unconscious. So if you look a little bit deeper, if you study the work of Joseph Campbell, he'll show you cross-cultural references where these symbols show up. Carl Jung is also a great resource where these symbols show up that represent certain things that people have always known that religious and scientific people today, in their ignorance, both ends, have screwed up. If you're a science guy and you're fighting for the fact that Jesus didn't walk on water, you're wasting your time because we know that can't happen. So why are you giving all religious people a bad rap because of something that, on the other end, you got some dummies that still believe? You see, unity means we got to rise above even that separation that separation. Science and religion, we need to come together left and right, east and west, up and down. Today is a day of integration, and all these things come together.
Wow, intriguing. And so through the Bahai Faith, whether, I suppose I'll address you, is your belief that there is a higher being that's manifesting through all these characters that you've described, like Jesus and Muhammad and all the rest of it? Or do you believe that God is actually, it is everything, which is an idea that's been expressed before, that I am God, you are God, Eliott, my speaker next to me is God, my mice is God. Do you believe that everything is God, or do you think there's actually a higher being that's manifesting itself through all these characters?
Well, yes. So God is everywhere, omnipotent, omnipresent, doesn't have a beginning, doesn't have an end. All these things that quantum physicists use to describe the universe, it's God. It's all this stuff. So for me or anyone to try to define God is a circle jerk. It's kind of a waste of time. That's trying to solve the problem at the level at which the problem's created. We can't think like God because we're not in that state of consciousness as an individual, as an embodied human being. We just can't see that. But we see signs of it, symbols of it. And, the world of manifestation that we live in is one sign of it. Now, with regard to the teachers, if you liken every human being, this is just a metaphor, you liken every human being on earth onto a mirror. And the light of God reflects himself, his self, herself, itself, through each human being, through our character, through our way of being, through the energy we carry. I mean, however you want to describe it. I say the body is the mind, but it's through our self. We carry the light of existence. And, I use bioenergetics to break some of that light free, because a lot of times we're blocking, our ego blocks. Our ego is the interface by which we come to this world. We need an ego, otherwise we dissolve into nothing.
Yeah.
Our body is our ego, as I described it earlier, meaning that what's happening on your psychological level shows up, manifests physically. We're all mirrors, but we all have our spots on the mirror, right? We're all kind of, I'm a little dirty in this part of my mirror. I haven't gotten that thing figured out yet. I don't have self-love figured out yet. I don't have compassion figured out yet. You see what I'm saying? Anything.
Yeah.
I mean, perfection, none of us are perfect. We're all fallen. When I say fallen, I mean we come from the higher vibration down into these lower physical vibrations. So that's the way it's going to be. Baha'is believe that every once in a while, a perfectly polished mirror shows up in our midst. So you could think of Jesus as a perfectly polished mirror. You could think of Buddha, or any of the teachers we can go into, and you can decide. Krishna. So when that perfectly shined and cleaned mirror shows up, he or she reflects the perfect light of God, meaning ego has completely been dissolved. All defenses, all muddiness that shows up in our character has been cleansed. And through that mirror, us as other human beings that we're not perfect, we can observe and learn from. They're merely teachers.
Right. And can they teach us to fully cleanse our own mirrors so that we can have
all kinds of great ideas? Yeah, they give us all kinds of great ideas. One of the great ideas that every single one of them has given us is meditation. Every single teacher, every single one. You look at Muslims, they pray 5 times a day. 5 times. Every single teacher teaches us the tools that will support us in our evolution. And meditation is one of them.
Yeah, right on, Eliott. I'm intrigued by this discussion. This has been an absolute blessing. So, given the 5 minutes we have left, Eliott, we've got a lot of young men listening in, which is, I know, probably primarily your audience, and it's primarily mine as well. But whether we're men or not, or we're 70 years old, or we're 15 years old, who gives a shit? At the end of the day, I'm just curious, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self to live a better life? What would you tell your 20-year-old self if you go back in time and give him a few words?
I wouldn't tell him anything. I wouldn't give him any advice. I would simply pat him on the back and say, "Hey, dude, you got this."
Wow, is there some kind of deeper meaning to that? I'm quite intrigued.
Well, your question assumes that there's a problem that should have been solved, or something that needed to be fixed when I was 20, as opposed to when I'm 38 now.
That's true.
Something that would have enhanced the journey or supported me. What I'm telling you is there is no problem. Nothing needed to be done. If I met 20-year-old Eliott, he'd probably be full of a little bit of anxiety, and I would just say, "Hey, dude, don't worry about it. You got this."
Interesting. What about the people that don't discover, if they aren't told to learn, bioenergetics or to learn about active meditation, if they aren't ever told that? Like, some people will die today and they've never learned how to get into their bodies. So wouldn't being able to tell your 20-year-old self that, hey, there's this thing called active meditation, bioenergetics, that can help you lead a better life, wouldn't that be a positive thing? Or am I still making like a fallacy here in terms of assuming that there's a problem?
Dude, the only reason why we're talking about active meditation and bioenergetics is because I found it at 24.
That's a good point.
Yeah. I solved that problem for myself, and now I'm doing it through this podcast and everything else I've done.
That is true. Yeah, okay. You've blown my mind a bit, Eliott. I'm definitely going to be playing through this episode quite a few times. That's for sure. Okay. So we've got a few minutes left, Elliott, and I'm just going to use the remaining 3 minutes to give you a genuine thank you, man. Like, you're Elliott freaking Hulse, dude. there's a lot of support for you, and I see why people look up to you, and even just through this podcast, I can really feel that you're grounded in your body, and I can feel that a lot of positive energy, whatever you want to call it. So once again, thank you, Elliott, for coming on. I really appreciate you sharing your time, your wisdom, and your experience.
Oh, my pleasure. I had a lot of fun.
Fuck yeah. All right. So I'll just to let my listeners know, if you just type in Elliott Hulse on YouTube or Strength Camp, you are bound to find Elliott's channels. And Eliott, if you want to direct our listeners to your website where we can learn more about grounding camp, then yeah, please feel free to do so now. Like, what website are we heading to?
Groundingcamp.com.
Fucking too easy. All right. Awesome, Eliott. With that said, I'll leave you go, dude.
It was great, man. I appreciate it.
All right. Catch you later. Head to brandonnankivell.com/subscribe. This is also the best way to interact with me and keep up with what I'm doing. Again, head to brandonnankivell.com/subscribe. As usual, thank you for listening, my friends. I release new episodes every week. Make sure you don't miss one by subscribing. It's super easy and means a lot to me. Go to iTunes, search for The 1% Show, and click subscribe. Once again, I'm your host, Brandon Nankivell, and I'll see you in the next episode.